Hi everyone, and welcome back to Future Ready Tech, the Modern Work Podcast, the podcast where we explore how technology is reshaping the way that we work. I'm your host, Ed Dale, and in today's episode, we're talking about how can businesses get a head start no matter what the future holds. Because let's be honest, the workplace is changing fast. From AI to flexible working models, the businesses who act early will shape the future, not just survive it. Joining me today are three fantastic guests. Mark Bickmore, Surface Specialist at XMA, Nick Tate, Partner Development Manager at Microsoft Surface, and also Tom Cripps, also a Partner Development Manager from Microsoft Surface. So Mark, starting off with kind of a big picture question. We've seen that Forrester have done a lot of research into how generative AI is going to influence more jobs than it replaces. So what do you, in your view, what do you think that influence means for businesses nowadays?
Yeah, of course. I like to zoom out and have a look at just the conditions at how customers are working and within the modern workplace. And the world of work is changing more rapidly than it ever has. First of all, the change in demographics in the office. So Gen Zs have now replaced baby boomers as more prominent workforce.
Anyone feeling old yet? Well,
exactly.
Not you.
Yeah. But because of that, the Gen Zs are more open to new technologies like generative AI. And it's quite interesting because this really is a watershed moment really for AI, because 75% of the same Forrester survey, 75% of employees already use and adopt AI within their workforce. And that's really interesting because the organizations may not have an AI strategy in place. So if you look at the way the world of work has really evolved and changed, it's really set up to adopt AI at scale, and devices are an integral part of that adoption too. So if we look at why now, I'd argue because of Windows 10 end of support, you really need to see the adoption of AI within the next lifespan of the devices that you're adopting and purchasing today.
Absolutely. And one of the things I read a little while ago is the way that AI, it's not necessarily replacing jobs, it's replacing tasks within those jobs. So effectively, it just seems like benefits. You know, it's helping people just do things quicker. You know, like I'm thinking people that work in finance, you know, accounts being able to do, you know, first pass processes much quicker. You know, a lot of the legwork that might have gone into a relatively kind of straightforward task has now been reduced. So in terms of, you know, just the output, it's growing hugely.
Absolutely. I think the real currency within organizations at the moment is productivity.
Exactly.
A lot of organizations, especially IT decision makers and employees themselves, productivity is being asked more and more of them. So that's why I think if we look at the generational changes within organizations, they're looking at ways to not only get tasks done quicker with tools like Copilot and Copilot Plus PCs, but it's more about how can you find enjoyment from the everyday tasks that you do. And I think generative AI and Copilot, for instance, allows you to get through some of those informational tasks a lot quicker on the day-to-day.
And you say that, you know, like Gen Z, hi Nick.
Yeah.
They obviously, they've got like a higher expectation, you know, when they enter the workplace. I mean, a lot of like Gen Z now, they're very kind of like in tune with AI. And when they enter the workplace, they kind of expect, you know, the workplace to reflect the world in which they've kind of come up in. So it's important that organizations embrace these changes to, you know, attract the next generation of talent into their organization.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think for me, I don't know how I ever worked without Copilot. I can't even remember now a day that I didn't have Copilot and I didn't use some of the efficiencies that it does. I think if you look at some of our big customers that are currently using Surface devices, summarizing a 300-page document within 5 bullet points and taking all those hours of hard work and doing it in such an efficient way is incredible. And I think customers that aren't using AI will eventually fall behind them. I think we're already seeing that in a lot of customers at the moment.
Absolutely. And again, that comes back to that productivity point that you were just making. But you mentioned the devices, because we've been hearing a lot about Copilot Plus PCs. And I think there might be some confusion out there, because obviously you got Copilot, you got Surface. What is a Copilot Plus PC?
Sure, absolutely. So a Copilot Plus PC is ultimately a device which has been optimized specifically to run AI workloads. and it does that locally on the device rather than in the cloud, which is a key thing to call out for various reasons. It has an MPU, which is a neural processing unit, which is separate from the GPU and CPU. So the MPU is specifically used for processing data, which is running AI workloads essentially. So if you're using a device that doesn't have an MPU, however, you're trying to run AI workloads, and that doesn't have to be on Copilot, so that's just something specifically to call out, because obviously the name's tied in with the term.
You think it's tied to Copilot, but it's not, it's just AI, really, isn't it?
It's just AI, exactly. So think about all of the third-party applications that businesses are using today. The question that I ask the customers is, are you looking to adopt any AI workloads or applications in the future, or will you be using them on this device specifically? And if the answer is yes, then our advice is always to look at Copilot plus PC, because without it, you've got the CPU and the GPU that will be trying to manage those AI intensive tasks.
As well as everything else.
As well as everything else that they're doing. And ultimately that's going to drain the battery life, and it's going to impact the performance, and then it's going to give a bad experience to the end user, which is ultimately where
and you say in terms of, customers that are looking to adopt AI, I mean, it's almost impossible not to. I mean, you mentioned, we're not just talking Copilot, we're talking all the other ISVs. Everyone is bringing AI into their applications, their services. To say, I don't use AI, that's soon going to be impossible to say, right?
Well, it's even simple efficiencies. So if you look at Windows Studio effects that are on all the other OEM brands as well as Surface, even things like portrait blur in the background, which is a really simple efficiency, but again, it's maximizing the MPU rather than having a Teams call open, a PowerPoint. You're also replying to emails while on the call. It'll be maximizing that AI workload with the background blur, and people don't even realize that's an AI efficiency. So one of the other things that I was just going to touch on, what is the Copilot Plus PC? There's a minimum specification that we need to have for it to be enabled as a Copilot Plus PC. So it has to be a minimum of 40 TOPS, so 40 trillion operations per second. It needs to have now 16 gigabytes of RAM and then 256 gig of SSD. And that is just because of the AI workload that's starting to develop, that they need to be really powerful devices to make sure that it is. And the full Surface portfolio moving forward will be Copilot Plus PCs. We won't just do standard AI PCs. It will be the most premium devices on market.
Fantastic. So, and along with Surface, being premium, I think one of the strong it always has been one of Surface's really strong points is the fact that it is made by Microsoft. Microsoft makes Windows, Microsoft makes M365, and Microsoft makes Copilot. So it would stand to reason that, like these Surface Copilot Plus PCs, they're really kind of like spearheading Copilot Plus. They're really kind of spearheading Copilot Plus PC adoption, right?
Indeed they are. And when we came up with the concept of Surface devices, the whole point of it was to drive innovation faster. Like, you make an absolutely fantastic point there, is that obviously with Microsoft building the hardware and the software, they've designed specifically to work with each other. And you get the best experience of our wider suite of applications that comes with Microsoft on a Surface device. It's tried and tested on those devices. It goes through our labs on those devices. So it's always going to be optimized for it. Copilot Plus was first to market with Surface devices. So as such, we've actually, so far in the world, 47% of all Copilot Plus PCs that have been sold have been Surface device. That's as of today. The other OEMs have now released Copilot Plus PCs as well, so they're catching up on that. However, that's always been a theme when it comes to Surface, right? When you look at things like Windows Hello, for example, that's a technology that was first seen on Surface. When you look at what we can do on our devices when it comes to security with things like DFCI and managing and maintaining our own UEFI, like that's something that was come first to Surface. And we like to be the pioneers around this, because what we're trying to do is to ultimately give customers the best experience that they can have on that device. And I guess to touch back on like your original point is when you were saying that there's an expectation within the workforce to have these devices nowadays. People are bringing their own devices to work. They want these great experiences. They're used to what they're buying in consumer, which is, every September getting the latest iPhone, for example, for it to work, to have the best tech. And there's something that sits behind that, which is ultimately like, I've got a device that I'm proud of. I've got a device that I can do the best work that I can possibly do on. And if you're an organisation that's giving that to your employees, then you're setting them up for success ultimately, right?
Absolutely, yeah, you're investing in people.
Exactly, and it's a huge employee retention tool as well, providing them with the exact tools and premium devices. And to touch back onto the Surface heritage, if you like, Surface has always followed innovation, has really been the pioneer, not just for Copilot Plus PCs, but they were the first to market and best in market to provide a two-in-one device, where it's so prevalent nowadays in this hybrid work environment to have the best work experience no matter where you are working, whether that may be in the office or working from home or in field work too. So along with Windows Hello, the two-in-one devices and even the touchscreen capabilities is still the best in class with touchscreen capabilities. So Surface has always really pioneered the way into a Windows operating system device to be the next step into productivity, efficiency, to really provide that baseline for businesses to really push on.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. And one of the things that you do see Surface kind of being a trailblazer with these new technologies. Surface has always been about innovation, and the fact that, and what kind of proves it to me is that now a lot of the OEMs are now starting to do Copilot Plus PCs. They now also see that this is the future, that this is the way that it's going, and the AI and everything else, Copilot Plus PCs, that is the shape of what tomorrow is going to be. So the fact that everyone is kind of first on Surface, now everyone's jumping on the bandwagon, that just kind of underlines the point to me that this is a change that people need to be looking at and to embrace.
Oh, 100%. I think if you look at devices in general now, devices are no longer a commodity anymore. I don't know if you remember back in 2019 when COVID happened and there was a real panic buy.
School, weren't you?
I was still at school, yeah. But there was real panic buying through the industry, and they were getting devices in that weren't fit for purpose. So I think that the key message that I'd love to say to customers today is devices are no longer a commodity. They should always be a strategy within your business, and customers should be leveraging the MPU to make sure that they're getting the most out of their staff members. And we've got a load of different devices for different personas within the organisation, and we've got a device to fit all. So it's key moving forward for this year.
And that's a really, really good point. Back in 2019 when you were about 12, basically. So back then, you're right. We had that chip shortage. There was the chip shortage. There was
panel shortage.
Pandemic,
everything
was absolutely. So people were buying devices that were, they weren't even good then. No. But it was one of those cases that back in 2020 when it all really started to kick off, you just had to. It was kind of get what you're given and like it, because there was no other choice. But we are now 5 years from that point. So for a lot of customers now, are either on or are coming up to or are now on their refresh cycle. And it's even more pertinent this year with, as Mark mentioned earlier, with Windows 10 EOS coming up on October 14th. Well done. Yeah. October.
We would have been in trouble. Yeah, we would have been in trouble if we hadn't got that right. So
there you go, Alex. They've done well. No, absolutely right. Yeah. So October 14th. Yeah, is when obviously it's all. So now is the time. Really. I mean, there are. I know there is a lot of organisations out there that are still running Windows 10 devices. We also know that Windows 11 has got some of the strictest hardware requirements of any version of Windows ever since, which means that for some people, their devices that they currently have would be ineligible. So it's time to refresh. And if you're going to be refreshing, then why not look at a device that's going to be, ready for tomorrow, not just good for today.
Yeah, the customers I speak to at the moment at XMA, we really support public sector, central government, all of the schools from further and higher education, even in the commercial space too. The IT teams that I speak to are being asked to really build future fit IT strategies. And it isn't necessarily looking in the short horizon of saying, is this capable of running Windows 11? It's what do we want our strategy to be over the next 3 or 4, potentially 5 years' time. Once again, our IT teams that we speak to are expected to do more with less. And that's where the importance of value really comes into what you're purchasing now. Customers I speak to, they still need to be adaptive and accelerating the ability to potentially reconfigure how they work is really important, as well as the creativity side. So how can you really empower your employees of your organization to be innovative, and what tools can you provide them to be innovative? Lastly, resilience is so important too. Who knows what's going to come around the corner? So the importance of buying once, buying right at this stage, not just for Windows 11, but for what's coming in the very near future, is really, really important.
Absolutely, I think we'd agree. It's a lot more strategic now. It's not just upgrading a device. It's not just buying a new piece of hardware. It's looking at, we know where the future is going, and make sure we're giving our people the right tools to face that. Right.
One of the things as well, and I know we kind of touched on it earlier, it's the rate of change. It's the rate of speed of technology and how it's changing ultimately, right? I mean, if we look back at the portfolio 18 months ago, right, we had a AI focused device, but it wasn't Copilot Plus PC, so it didn't have the same spec. It was running at 11 million tops, and Nick mentioned that earlier. It's trillions of operations per second, right? 11 tops, should I say? Sorry.
Yeah.
I said 11 million. Sorry, 11 tops, right? And we're now on these 40 tops.
Yeah, in the space of how many months between?
Around 18 months, right?
And the silicon providers are innovating new chips all the time, so I'd expect that number to be heavily increased by sort of mid next year. And I think one of the other things that we haven't really touched on these devices at all is the security. Obviously, from chip to cloud, Microsoft create it all, and with the Pluton layer that's now in all of our devices, they're the most secure devices on the market.
Well, I'd say that's hugely important. Like strong device security and encryption, because you think of like certain customers that might work in like legal, government, all these sort of, they need that level of secure on devices, right?
Everyone does, unfortunately, nowadays. It's really hard not to go onto news outlets and see, cybersecurity threats and attacks.
Hasn't been a great year, has it?
Being prominent in news. So whether you're a small, medium business all the way up to an enterprise or government customer, this is really the baseline that is required. And that does not only start with Windows 11, but it also is with the devices that your end users are using on a day-to-day basis. Surface, I think we can all confidently say, are arguably one of the most secure devices on the market. That's because of the supply chain and the security around the supply chain that comes into it. But as Nick said, the cloud, chip to cloud security on every layer just creates this foundation of security, and it's perfectly set up for AI adoption, which is hugely important too. Copilot Plus PCs are really designed, and Pluton chipsets have really been brought into Copilot Plus devices to enable a secure AI workflow, and that really does start with devices.
Well, that's a really good point, because I think one of the, especially in the modern work world, one of the key concerns around AI and Copilot has been security. And you're right, security doesn't just span cloud, it needs to be that combination. I always use the analogy of, there's some people out there that think, well, I don't need to worry about hardware security. I've got some really good antivirus, but that is like saying, I don't need to lock my house anymore because I've got a really good alarm system. You need both. You need both that cloud and the hardware layer, which, with that chip to cloud message, Surface does really bring together. And for people looking to start adopting, AI, Copilot, it gives you that secure foundation.
Absolutely. Well, security goes hand in hand with productivity, because you could have all the keys to the door, but it will take you some time to log in and actually get working, right? I think what Surface has managed to create with tools like Windows Hello and all of the Entra technologies within Microsoft 365, it enables users to log in securely first time and immediately work no matter where they are, which is also really important in this hybrid workspace that we're currently in.
And then if you want flexibility around your controls as well, there are some unique to Surface features in security that I mentioned earlier, which, for example, DFCI, which is a device firmware control interface. Through DFCI, you can essentially enable specific hardware components of the device and how they interact with the user. So, for example, working with a school at the moment who they're deploying their devices through Intune and Autopilot using the Surface Management Portal, which is ultimately it's a portal within Intune, which is a single pane of glass where a customer can get a view across their whole Surface estate, and it will show them things like whether the devices need patching or updates, or when the warranty's valid till, or if they have to do any sort of swap out on the device, like what stage that's at within that cycle, and you can raise tickets with Microsoft directly through it. It's got the carbon emissions estimator built into it as well, so you can see the carbon emissions across your estate if sustainability is key to you. But this school in particular, they wanted to make sure they got the best of Microsoft, and they wanted to enable DFCI, because what they didn't want their students to do is to be able to boot an OS through a USB stick ultimately, right?
Okay.
So what they've done is they've decided to really control that device by shutting down the USB port, which would be used to enable that kind of boot function, meaning that they can be ultra secure on that. And then when you get into government customers, for example, if you wanted to shut down a camera, you can turn that off at the firmware level, so the device doesn't even recognize that camera is a component within that device.
So it's not like it could be just hotwired by code, effectively, because it's basically just the device. As far as the device is concerned, it doesn't exist anymore.
Absolutely, yeah.
I always think it's incredible. I think it's James Bond sort of stuff, where you can disable the microphone, camera, all the stuff that could be a security risk within these ultra secure organizations. Turning it off at a firmware level is huge. It used to be you had to do a custom build to remove these components, but why would you now do that when you can turn it off at a firmware level and still have those functions for future use when you ultimately in 4 or 5 years time come to refresh your devices, you can then get that premium higher residual value back, meaning that you can go into the next iteration of what's available in the market at the time.
And the fact you can do all that through Autopilot, another first to Surface. You can do all that through Autopilot during the config, so it arrives to the end user already set up for the task it's there for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Once again, IT teams have been asked to do more with less, and certainly with the time that they require, it's really hard for IT teams to adopt new tools like Copilot, because there's so many security components, there's so many devices out there that require love and attention, shall we say, and make sure that everything is up to date and up to speed, right? So IT teams are really being stretched. One of the benefits of Intune and Autopilot is organizations like XMA, we can help with either a white glove service or with a zero touch deployment, meaning that devices could be shipped directly to the end user, and within 10-15 minutes of turning on the device, the configuration pulls down directly, which means the IT team doesn't necessarily need to even touch the device. So my argument is, what would IT teams do with that extra 30-40 minutes per device that they're not touching anymore in terms of configuration? And that's when you can really start thinking about innovation with tools like Copilot and adopting those.
And as I'm guessing from this, XMA is in a really good position to help customers navigate and facilitate this shift.
Yeah, from a device perspective, absolutely. The white glove services that we offer in terms of devices are absolutely second to none. A part of the reason for that is XMA are the #1 IT solutions provider that is privately owned within the UK. So that gives us full scope of not only helping central government, local government, higher and further educations, as well as corporate customers, SMB, all the way up to enterprise, to offer the real tailored white glove service specifically to those organizations. We also offer AI solutions too, which Terry's going to touch on the next episode. So tune into the next episode.
Spoilers.
So yeah, XMA are really finely placed, and with our heritage of the last 40 years, we are absolutely knocking it out of the park in terms of customer service.
So guys, we spoke about a lot of things on this episode, but if we could just summarize some of those key points.
Yeah, of course. I mean, from an employee's point of view, it's all around maximising productivity, maximising efficiency. I think one thing that we haven't spoke about that we're going to speak about in a future episode is the ergonomics and aesthetics of our devices. It's about that employee retention that Mark spoke about earlier. But there are so many different pieces of a Surface device that we'll go through in the next episode that make a Surface device the very best and most premium device on market. And a couple more facts that I think Mark and
yeah,
Tom are
yeah.
gonna go
I
through.
mean, look, also you've got the employee experience, right? And then from a IT perspective, so IT get the tools that they need ultimately to be able to give them flexibility with these devices, but also to manage and deploy these devices. I touched on a little bit there around the sustainability as well, but there's these are ultra sustainable devices, so they can also be managed. We can manage the view across sustainability within that surface management portal that I mentioned earlier, right? So ultimately, it gives them the flexibility that they have with regards to the tools that they're using with the wider Microsoft suite that's been built hand in hand with the Surface device.
And the fact that you mentioned, the IT, because it's not just about giving a good experience to the employees, it's about making sure the IT team can also have a good experience when it comes to managing the device. They don't want to be given more work to do. They want kind of an easier life effectively, and the Surface is going to help them do that.
And it's all tools that they're used to, right? If they've got Microsoft in terms of a platform, right, and they're using Windows 11 and the broader Microsoft Cloud suite, ultimately, like these are tools that they're used to. Things like Intune for deployment, autopilot management, all of those good things.
Absolutely.
And what that means for businesses, if you have a great employee experience and then you're offering the IT team to have space to create strategy, that just creates business resilience no matter how big your organization is. It gives businesses the ability to adapt and overcome any concerns or troubles in the future, right? But it enables some space to be creative and innovative too. In short, that will effectively give you that competitive edge against any of your competition out there, because you're providing all of those tools to the core of your business. And you can meet customers faster, you can build business results faster through it too.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, guys, I'm sure we could keep going for absolutely hours, but I think we need to tie a knot in this now. Nick, Tom, Mark, thank you very much, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
So that brings us to the end of today's conversation. A huge thank you to Mark, Tom, and Nick for sharing their insights and experiences. And if you're listening and wondering where to start your own AI or modern workplace journey, don't wait. Follow XMA on LinkedIn for more insights like these. And if you want to talk about how to future-proof your organization, get in touch with the XMA team for a free consultation. Thanks again for tuning in, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of the Modern Work Podcast. Goodbye.